Webinar 4, as you're aware, is about working well in groups and how we can stay connected as a gleaning network. Overview of today's session is that we are going to start off with a little bit of a discussion about experience we have working well in community groups, and we want to draw out of you some stories and experiences of positive participation. From about 10:30 for around an hour, we're going to be joined by Dan Woolley and Josie from Semble, who are a fantastic organisation that run a national network of community groups and provide support to those groups. We'll have a little break, stretch our legs. And then the sort of second half, or the last hour or so, we're going to have a discussion about inclusivity and diversity in terms of ensuring everybody feels welcome, and we're going out of our way to ensure that message gets through. And then we want a discussion really about what your group needs are, as well as what feedback's able to offer in the coming weeks and months, before having a discussion about how we keep in touch and share learning and share stories and experiences and celebrate what everyone's doing around the country. So I think everyone here has been on a session before, but just sort of obligatory go through webinar housekeeping so that everyone's clear on the format. Please do feel to use the chat box as we go, to keep the kind of meta conversation going. If any technical issues occur, if you can't hear or you're struggling with anything on Zoom, just flag it as promptly as you can. There's the raise hand function, so do use that if you want to speak. One tip for when these slides are up is if you minimize the screen to just one speaker and then drag it to the bottom left, then it shouldn't interfere with any of the text on the presentation. It would be great to have a really nice, as we have been doing throughout the session so far, courteous and inclusive style of discussion, which takes into account everyone's different positions and the variety of entry points into the community sector that we all have. Worth having a pen and paper to hand to make any notes, and as we previously mentioned, that we are recording, so thank you for consenting to that. It's going to mean that we can put these videos on the website to enable other people to hopefully benefit from the learning as well. Okay, so without further ado, we'll jump into this first section where we're going to be discussing, well, I'll hand over to you, Maddie, if that's okay, and then you can sort of host this discussion. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sure. I think what we just I think I'm gonna instead be capturing some of what people are saying, I think.
Okay. So
yeah, I'm happy to jump in and facilitate this bit.
Great.
Cool. Yeah. Apologies for that. So yeah, it's just a bit of an icebreaker, and we can use it as a bit of a check-in because we kind of want to focus on some positive experiences, I think, from any kind of experience you've had kind of working with community projects, organizations, where essentially you've just felt valued and welcomed as a participant, because we think it's going to be a really nice way of kind of sharing stories, framing sort of work in the community quite positively. And also, hopefully, we can draw out some of the, some of what it is that things big and small that organisations have done and can do in order to make an experience as a participant very valuable or welcome. So, yeah, I mean, it could be anything. It could be going on a gleaning day. It could be kind of some voluntary work. It could actually, if you wanted to frame it in the context of kind of professional work as well. But we thought what would be nice to do is just, if we spend 2 minutes just kind of reflecting on that silently to ourselves, note down any ideas that you might have, and then we can do a little sort of popcorn round, sharing with the group. And you know, if you're happy to vocalize, then brilliant. If not, then we can just kind of pop that in the chat. So great. 2 minutes from now. So yeah, just about 11 or 12 minutes past, we will jump in. Does that all sound okay?
James, could you put the sort of the question to reflect on in the chat?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you can stop sharing now, Phil, if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is quite sort of artificially. I think
I'll leave that for these.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everybody found that an interesting task to draw out some of those kind of positive reflections or memories. What I'd like to do is be a bit mean and keep any reflections that we share with the group to a maximum of 1 minute. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the time, and just a bit of forewarning that you might get interrupted and cut off. So if people are feeling not particularly shy this morning, I might give anyone the opportunity to jump up. Rebecca, I've just seen that you've raised your hand. So did you have a point that you wanted to make?
yes, I did. Hello. I'll put my video on for a sec. Yeah, I just was reflecting on this and just feel like I've had some really valuable experiences in that kind of area. Like I did I have to say there's been quite a few, like, but like one was when I did a placement with a wildlife reserve, and it was absolutely fantastic. And what made me feel so valued was that I was kind of I got to stay on site in like a sort of a little bungalow near the loch, and then like it's kind of, for me, like reflecting on it, it's kind of about making choices but also feeling supported. So it's like I was really free to like explore how I could be helping and doing things based on my interests. We would go out and like look for butterflies, we would go out and spot wildflowers, we would like observe the birds and the ospreys, and like I had so much choice about what I wanted to get involved in, but at the same time I had some very clear roles that I was supposed to be doing around that, so that gave me structure. So I think for me what was so good about it was that there was structure, but there was also like a lot of freedom and a lot of appreciation. And I think that's a big thing to do with that was because it was voluntary. It wasn't like it was a paid job, and there is a difference there because you get a lot of time to kind of, and things that was totally valuable was that the ranger who led the whole thing was just amazing. Like she was so good at facilitating that, so that's like a really good person in place to facilitate that as well was very valuable.
Perfect, Rebecca, thank you very much. I might have let you go over 1 minute there, so I'm not going to do the same for everyone though. Steve, just need to unmute yourself, Steve.
Apologies, I've already wasted 10 seconds of my 60. The Lions were contacted by a group that look after women who've suffered abuse. We got together, we managed to gather clothes and toys, and it was very, very well done. And we then arranged for Father Christmas to go along and give these toys away to the parents and the kids. So that, in a way, was a form of gleaning, if you like, because those clothes and toys would probably have, they may very well have gone to shops. But because everybody had a smile on the face the day that Father Christmas turned up, and the feel-good factor of that was good for everybody. The kids, the mothers, the people organising it, and the Lions. So everybody, and we continue to do that. That happened 3 or 4 years ago, and we continue to do it. So that was a form of gleaning, if you like, where we used stuff that would not normally have had a second chance, if you like.
Nice one, Steve. Thank you. That's your 1 minute and 3 seconds. Anybody else feel compelled to share anything? Go on, Karen.
Yeah, my experience was when I actually started a freelance role as a community food worker in a community that I didn't know. I was actually quite surprised to get the job because even I live 8 miles away, but I didn't actually know anyone in the community at the time. But they created a fantastic induction for me. It was just brilliant. They made sure that I met kind of various different people throughout the day, and it was really spacious, and it was over cups of tea, and they'd even done things like arrange lunch, which I found incredible because I had my packed lunch with me. And they, I think the thing was that they were really encouraging, but they were also really accepting of boundaries as well. So when they were kind of talking about what was possible and what they hoped would happen, they were really willing for me to say, well, you know, my sense at the moment from doing the research you sent me is that it might be good to start here, and so on. And so a bit, as Rebecca was saying, there was that great balance between interests and what needed to happen and kind of structure, and also free flowing. And I think the other thing is they were really smiley, which was great. I think a smile goes a long way. And there was real clarity as well. The clarity was, you know, these are challenges, or these are non-negotiables in the community. You know, these are things to avoid doing, and so on. And I just found the whole thing, I came away kind of really clear and really energized from the whole thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. Anyone considering popping their hand up? Go on, Tina.
Yeah, I volunteer for Devon and Cornwall Food Action, who take surplus food from supermarkets and other donations and then redistribute them. So we work with the also Plymouth Community Homes, who look after all of the council properties around Plymouth, and also with the police, so they can identify really needy causes, and we sometimes have to make up emergency boxes on the spot and just deliver them out for people in need. And that's the time when you feel like you're actually doing something useful. When we had to deliver to a young mum with a couple of kids a few weeks ago, and they said that she hadn't got any food. So we took loads of stuff, including frozen. And when you get there and you go in there and she opens her freezer up and there literally is nothing in that freezer and there's nothing in that fridge, and you know that everything that you've taken there is going to be used, and they're really grateful for it. And Devon and Cornwall made me feel very welcome, Devon and Cornwall Food Action, because I can drive the van, and they're always desperate for drivers. So the minute somebody walks through the door that can actually drive one of the vans, you're made very, very welcome.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Tina. Any more? Go on, Karen.
I was a little bit different. I'm talking about a campaigning group. I was very involved in a campaign to keep the local swimming pool open about 10 years ago, which was successful. But what made that so successful and made me feel part of it, I think, was a combination of a core team of people who are really dedicated and devoted and could see the benefit. So making cliques developed, so that the communication went out so everybody knew everything that was happening, which was quite a large overhead to do that, and also respecting the different abilities of the different people who were involved in the campaign. So there was somebody who was very involved in regeneration, somebody who had legal expertise. I had expertise in aquatics and program management, but people worked together and respected each other and appreciated each other's skills, but let them get on with the things that they were good at.
Brilliant and perfectly timed. I just wanted to reflect something quite brief, a couple of things that have come up in the chat, and that's, I've never timed myself speaking, so this is going to be interesting. I'll kind of realize how it is for everyone. But it's just on this idea of, I guess, speaking from somebody who's been involved in some community projects as a sort of a participant, but then also kind of running community events as well, and then kind of seeing it from the other side, is this idea of kind of people feeling like they're a part of a wider cause or initiative or purpose, I think is incredibly important. It's something that gives people, well, it's what motivates us to do that. And in order to kind of to facilitate that as much as possible, you can never go too far to try and sort of explain the reasons why we're all there and kind of some of the wider context. So we kind of brief our gleaning volunteers on some of the environmental crisis and this kind of thing, but it also comes down to why things work in individual ways. I remember volunteering at a few kind of homeless initiatives when I first moved to London, and the organisers were brilliant and really friendly and very welcoming, but they were so busy, I didn't really feel like they gave us the chance to kind of speak properly. Oh, there we go. Didn't give us the chance to kind of speak. I'm just going to ignore that. Didn't give us the chance to fully understand why structures were in place there to kind of help people out. And I think the more you were able to understand why things are the way they are on an organisational level, the more likely you are to want to dedicate more fully to that. Any more reflections? Just to say hi to Semble, who have just joined us.
Hi. We're just waiting for Dan to join us as well, but it's good to meet you guys.
Fantastic. Welcome, Josie. We're just doing a little round of people sharing sort of reflections on where they felt kind of welcomed or valued being a part of a community project or organisation. Anyone else got any other reflections they wanted to share? Susie?
Hi, hello.
Hello.
I was just remembering my first volunteering experience when I was about 16. I started helping out at the local youth club where I'd been going when I was younger. And just something I thought I'd add is for younger people, I suppose as a teenager, being given a sense of responsibility was important for me. And so, you know, we were given a lot of support, but also the ability to make some decisions on our own, or at least input into decisions, and then also feel supported and sort of part of a big family. So I think that helped me on my sort of journey in volunteering ever since, I suppose. James, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the most concise so far. So well done on that. Cool. Anyone else got any reflections that they wanted to share? Charmaine?
Yes, I was just thinking about, again, when I was younger and volunteering, about being treated fairly as well, as if, so, you know, that you don't feel like you're doing all the heavy work and somebody else is getting the lighter work and things like that, making sure that even people are swapping around in their duties if you're doing a weekly event or, you know, something's happening weekly. Because I remember when I was younger that I felt like I was the one doing all the washing up and the others were having fun playing with the younger children. But it wasn't actually noticed by the lead, and I didn't have the confidence at that time to sort of say, can I swap over? Can I do something else? And I think that's something to keep an eye out for as well. Thanks.
Definitely, yeah. It speaks to this need to just be very mindful of kind of how everyone participating and whether people are going to be enjoying it as well, what they're doing. And especially, as you say, if it ends up being kind of a longer term thing, it's important as an organizer to remember that the participants want to be getting something out of it more than just that feel good factor they're getting that day. Like there's always an opportunity to learn something in environments like that. So if you've got a number of tasks, it's of course great to be giving everybody the opportunity to do as many of them as possible, to have like a kind of a bit more of a rounded experience. Maddie?
Thanks. Yeah, it's just a reflection on that, really, that we grow up, we're in a society where hierarchy is really normal and competitive power over type behaviour is very normalised. And so, yeah, just being able to see, even if it's kind of on looking back at how those different power dynamics were played out in our different experiences is really, really interesting sort of lens to look at it through, and to think about how we use our position in different ways to relate to other people, how to become more kind of conscious and mindful of those sort of dynamics. Just say that Petra just shared in the chat as well, I think a flat structure with clear facilitation rather than leadership is great and ensures that everyone feels responsible. Yeah, there's just see, a lot of people have alluded to this balance of freedom and being held in different ways. I think that's a really clear sort of thing that's coming through, how empowering it can be that when you're given responsibility or the ability to be included in, or the authority within your own domain to make choices and decisions and be self-determining, but being very clearly held in terms of induction, structure, understanding your organisation, clear communication, and all of those things which are the responsibility of the organiser or the organisation.
Yeah, so I guess agency is a word that sort of pops in as well into my head when talking about that. Welcome, Dan. Nice to see you. We're just doing a little popcorn round to check in, getting people sort of sharing experiences where they felt kind of welcomed and valued being a part of an organisation, or just ways to kind of ensure a really good experience. And speaking as gleaning coordinators and former gleaning coordinators, not to put you on the spot too much, Dan, but maybe I'll let Phil have a go first. But yeah, there might be something if you wanted to do anything. So Dan's going to be facilitating the session shortly, along with Josie from Semble.
My reflection was going to be something that has already been mentioned about feeling listened to by the event organizer. So having that space at the beginning to do whether you call it an icebreaker or just an introductory round to check in, and feeling like there's room to bring something as well as to be there and contribute is a positive feeling to have, I think. But I didn't have too much more to add. I think those contributions were really brilliant, and it was nice to, I mean, we knew that you're a great bunch of community activists, but it's wonderful to hear that, you know, those experiences, diverse experiences come across. And I think, Maddie, you've captured it Have you to some extent? Some of the people? Brilliant.
I have.
So yeah, this will likely be another one of the long list of Miro boards and various means in which we've been capturing all of your great insights that we're going to be sharing sort of after the session. I'm mindful we're just getting up close to 10:30, so maybe we've got time for kind of one more reflection before we move on to the next part of the session. That is absolutely fine, because we've got some really good stuff in the chat as well, and very neatly moving on to 10:30. This will give me the opportunity to do a quick introduction. So yeah, very, very pleased to welcome Josie and Dan from Semble today. So Semble, for those of you who don't know, workers, I'm going to let them do the introduction much better than I can, but they are kind of a networking organisation that provides support to a wide diversity of kind of grassroots community organisations across the UK, in a number above over 3,000, and they offer kind of various support on organisational incorporation, fundraising, networking, and broadly kind of within the focus of kind of community and environmental work. Dan also has a checkered past as a gleaning coordinator and was previously managing kind of the National Gleaning Network, so he's obviously a prime candidate to be involved in this discussion as well. So yeah, they're going to run a session for an hour until 11:30, which is going to focus on some of these aspects, particularly how we might be able to access kind of financial support and funding through gleaning. So over to you, Dan.
Brilliant. Thank you, James, for that introduction. I'm very genuinely pleased to be here. I know a lot of people say that when they join Zoom calls, but this for me is a particular honour and a particular pleasure to be invited to speak here, and really inspiring to see how the Gleaning Network has grown and sort of brought on board so many great community projects, community groups, inspiring individuals. It was always the hope that I had, that we had at Feedback, that Gleaning would kind of become that. And in a sense, Gleaning has always been that. I mean, I think Maddie being here today is testament to the fact that I think, Maddie, you're one of the first people to kind of get behind the Gleaning Network. So to see 7 or 8 years on become, you know, as strong as we've been and as widespread as kind of people led as we are is genuinely inspiring. So as James said, I have a long history of gleaning and have since joined Team Semble, and Semble is all about communities and empowering communities, community groups and community projects to become better, sustainable, stronger, to support one another. So I see the overlap between what Feedback does and what Semble does as a kind of perfect match, and gleaning is the kind of. I'm going to talk too much. So I'll move on. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. What I thought I would do today, I know that a lot of there are any number of things that we could talk about today, and I'm very happy to take any number of questions at any point throughout. But I thought that perhaps the most useful thing to do, thinking of my experience of gleaning and a number of the groups I've worked with, is focus on kind of funding sustainability, because I know that one is that you will inevitably face whatever type of organizational group that you are, is, you know, to become sustainable and to kind of exist well into the future, which we hope you all will do. At some point, it is likely you'll want to access some funding. So I'm going to talk through some of the options. And I'm going to do that by a short presentation, which I hope will be fairly fun as well. So Maddie, I'm going to try and share my screen, and I'm going to ask you, please let me know if it works, and if it doesn't, we can quickly troubleshoot it. But I think this is going to be the one. Okay, right. So I'm not going to bore on about who Semble and what we do too much. I've already said what we do. We support community groups. We do that very quickly by, if this lets me slide on. So I'm just going to skip through these first slides. Just a quick tour. James mentioned we have more than 3,000 groups in our network. In fact, we are now 3,700 strong. So we're growing so quickly that these slides are out of date. There you go. And the type of community groups that are in Semble Network are really as varied as you could like, and they're varied in terms of where they are in the UK. They're varied in terms of what they do. So you've got a really, really sort of broad selection of anything from wheelchair basketball groups to little crafty gardeners, people, lots of community gardens in our network. Lions Barber Collective is an amazing initiative whereby a barber is training other barbers in mental health support. Really, all shapes and sizes are welcome in the Semble network, and that goes from unincorporated groups, 2 volunteers who started in a shed with a trowel and a bucket, to fully fledged charities that still consider themselves at the heart of kind of community action. We'll talk right at the end about how you can join Semble and some of the benefits, but that's not the primary purpose of being here today. The way that Semble supports business community groups is we largely try to tap into the power of businesses. So we ask businesses to provide funding, expertise and volunteers and anything else that they can possibly provide, assets or resource over to support community projects. This is one very quick example of a specific campaign that we ran. We got Brent Cross South Limited Partnership, who are a redevelopment agency, to offer a community grant funding scheme to community projects in that area. This is kind of Barnet in North London. And this is last year, we're running it again this year, but as a result of that campaign, we supported 10 community projects, invested sort of 25,000, and you can see there how many beneficiaries were able to benefit as a result of the wider campaign in Brent Cross South. So that's just an example of where we tap into businesses to offer funding and support to community projects. But let's talk about gleaning. And I thought the way that I would do this today is that I would give a tour of some of the gleaning groups around the world and how they have found a way to sustain themselves. And the brilliance of these groups around the world is they're all very different in the way they've gone about seeking funding for sustainability. So I'm going to start with Gleaning Network Belgium. Gleaning Network Belgium was one of the first gleaning groups in Europe. It was, I'm pleased to say, inspired by Feedback. Many years ago, Feedback went to do one of our Feeding the 5,000 events in Brussels. And at the end of that session, a wonderful volunteer, a wonderful individual stepped forward and spoke to us and said, I love what you guys do. Food waste is such an important issue in Belgium. How can we tackle it? As a result of that conversation, this one volunteer set up Gleaning Network Belgium. And from there on, with zero funding, but just an amazing team of volunteers, was able to set up and run a gleaning network for many, many years. It's still going today. They have their own Facebook page. You see quite a lot of posts on there. And as far as I'm aware, they still have no funding. They're just a really keen group of individuals that get together, usually in the kind of summer and autumn, and go gleaning and rescue lots of food from farms and distribute it. They work with food banks in both Belgium and the Netherlands, and they just somehow keep going. So it is, if you like, an inspiring example of how gleaning doesn't need very much. You need a couple of cars, you need some excited, enthusiastic people. You of course need a few friendly farmers. Beyond that, if you want, you can continue to glean forever and ever with very little resources. But of course, it is always helpful to have some funding. So we want to look at some other options of how that can be achieved. Here is Brewman Greece, wonderful group of people. Brewman, for those who don't know, and I certainly didn't, Brewman means yes, we can in the Greek language. And they assure me that they came up with this before Barack Obama did in 2012. They're a brilliant group. They do food waste activities across every sector you can imagine. They rescue food from shops, from farmers markets, from big retailers, from warehouses. And one of the things they do is they go gleaning to farms. You can imagine in Greece, the kind of produce they're getting is quite different. When I first saw one of their reports and it mentioned lemons and oranges, I was slightly, well, this isn't quite what we do in Lincolnshire, but it's nice to have a little bit of difference. But the way that Brewman have gone about funding their operations is quite inspiring. They, from day one, decided that it was time, if businesses and retailers and corporations were primarily responsible for food waste, it was time for them to put their hands in their pockets. So they've approached all sorts of businesses, from big supermarkets to some kind of shipping companies, some transport companies, and they've been very forward in saying to these companies, we want you to fund our activities in rescuing and redistributing food waste. So it is absolutely an option that gleaning groups can explore, whether that's looking at local businesses, national businesses, or so on. I'm not going to say it's easy, particularly in the current climate. A lot of businesses are facing a very hard time. At the same time, we are seeing more and more businesses recognising they have a part to play. So option number one is that your gleaning group could well receive money from a business, be that local, national or regional. Espigladors in Spain, again, another really inspiring group. They have managed to get a huge amount of traction in terms of the local press. They've started off in Catalonia in the north of Spain and have since spread across the country and inspired a number of kind of other small community within Spain to set up their own gleaning project. Beyond just gleaning, one idea they had within Espigladors, which is really fantastic, is they wanted to try and generate income through setting up, through creating their own product ranges. You can see on the right here some example. In Espigladors, they've made anything from soups, smoothies, jams, creams, anything you can make from kind of gleaned fruit and vegetables, they've kind of done it. And the brilliance of this is they've set up a small social enterprise which employs people who are otherwise, like we used to call, far from the labour market, disadvantaged, unable to access regular employment. So they've created a few jobs. They've now got their products listed in a number of stores across Catalonia and wider in Spain. So they're doing a fantastic job. It would not be true to say they're making, as far as when I last spoke to them, they are not making 100% of they're not covering 100% of their needs through product sales. You know, it is making a good contribution, and it is a growing contribution, but they're also relying on some grant funding, as indeed most of these groups will see are. As I am aware, it is very difficult to make 100% of your income from product sales, but it is possible. It is, of course, important to mention when we're talking specifically about gleaning that if we are relying on gleaned produce donated by a farmer, it is really important that we obtain consent from the farmer to, you know, to make income from that produce. And of course, in an ideal world, what we would seek to do is return a percentage of the proceeds to the farmer. And I'm sure that's something that feedback can talk more about. The Alchemic Kitchen is another example of where waste fruit and vegetables have been turned into saleable products, and that is the Alchemic Kitchen is a feedback project in Liverpool. So we can perhaps have a bit more Q&A about that for people who are interested. Rebon in France, again, this is a group that was set up by some amazing volunteers, you know, entirely for their own back. What they did, Rebon was particularly focused on the west of France. There are several gleaning groups in France, but Rebon had a really interesting idea that there was a core of about a dozen volunteers who were running the gleaning network, or in the west of France, so to speak. What they did is they set up a wider membership network. I think at one point they had close to 100 people, and asked their members to effectively make a small contribution. And that contribution would be used to fund the activities of the gleaning group in France. So maybe it was something like €20 per person they're looking at. And there are many examples of kind of community share schemes that can run, or member network schemes whereby people pay a small contribution. Of course, at the other end of the scale, there is community supported agriculture whereby people support the farmer, you know, pre-harvest. So I think that's a really inspiring example of, especially where a community is taking ownership. So again, it's something that we should continue to explore. By the way, I'll just say that I'm not saying that any of these particular options is right for you or wrong for you. And if anything, I would explore groups to explore each of these and to perhaps try a mix of them. But so the purpose today is to look at the sort of huge variety of options out there. And it may be that a number of people in this Zoom call right now have better experience and idea of community shares or kind of memberships, structures or networks and so on. And I would love at the end of this to hear from you about your own experiences of those kind of things. Okay, in the USA, again, there are a number of gleaning projects. Perhaps the largest is the Society of St. Andrew, which works across most of the states in the United States of America. There are a number of groups who are specific to certain states. There's a Society of St. Andrews nationwide across the USA. They are traditionally a church. They were born out of the church network. And one really strong advantage that gives them is that they've been able to tap into donations because they have a very large congregation, a large membership network across the United States. They are funded by their members or by their congregation, so to speak, as well as having been quite successful in running various appeals, grant funding programs, and so on. And as well as receiving financial donations from their network, they also are able to tap into a huge pool of volunteers through that. So when we had a conversation with them many years ago, for example, we asked them, we just want to compare and contrast how things worked in the UK versus how things worked in the USA. And we said, well, how do you move your produce around? Because in the UK, we're often reliant on calling on the likes of FareShare to come and, you know, send big trucks into the farmer's field to pick up food. And they told us in America that's no problem because all of their volunteers own pickup trucks and that kind of thing, which is a slightly different landscape to what we're working in the UK. But again, it's really interesting to hear about how gleaning works all across the world. Another example of gleaning in the USA, so this is Uproot in Colorado. Every time I see that photo, I just long to be there, gleaning at the foothills of the Colorado mountain. Again, I'm quite proud to say that Uproot were an organisation born from inspired by feedback. We did one of our Feeding the 5,000 events in Denver, Colorado. And as a result of that, again, and some amazing individuals thought, how can we bring this kind of food waste mission to Colorado, where there is a lot of food being produced, there are a lot of farms, and a lot of food unfortunately being wasted. So Uproot began life as a traditional gleaning group, and then they realised that gleaning went far beyond just tackling food. What they saw was that in America particularly, there has been recently a very significant shortage of farm workers. One of the reasons for that is, sorry to say that Donald Trump's administration has not been especially friendly to migrant workers. And a lot of the farms, especially in the southern states, California, Texas, Colorado, and so on, we're seeing a real shortage of farm workers around harvest time, which was, of course, if anything, only exacerbating food waste, without the workers being there able to harvest food in the fields. So Uproot had a really inspiring idea where they said, well, look, what we've got is we've got access to really kind of keen, willing, motivated volunteers, some of whom have multiple experiences of working on farms through the Gleaning Network and volunteering on farms. What if we created paid work opportunities for our volunteers? So they got state funding to set up a pilot. So funding from the Colorado government, and since a successful pilot whereby they were able to, send some of their volunteers to become workers on farms, they subsequently won contracts with a number of Colorado farmers. So Colorado farmers were paying Uproot to provide a mobile paid workforce, and Uproot were in turn able to pay those workers a fair wage. So a fantastic example of where gleaning evolves into something else, and both provides paid jobs and tackles the issue of labour shortages and prevents food waste. So almost solving many problems in one. And I'm very keen to check in with our friends at Uproot soon to see how that's going. Give back. So I'm sure Phil and James will recognise our truly inspiring colleague Kako. Kako is someone from Australia who, on a student who came over to the UK to study a master's, and as part of that interned at Feedback, and was so inspired by what she saw going on, that when she went home to her native Melbourne in Australia, she decided it was high time that Australia had some gleaning action, because the Australians do grow an incredible amount of fruit. And they're almost one of the most self-sufficient nations on earth, I believe, in terms of what they can grow. But the scale of production means that there was often a lot of food waste. What Kako did in order to get her gleaning network up and running was she ran a crowdfunding campaign. I'm sure many people in this call will be aware that crowdfunding is getting a huge amount of traction. It's a brilliant way that local groups can advertise the work that you're doing, advertise your goals, your objectives, and ask people to contribute. Crowdfunding works. It's such an amazing idea whereby people can contribute anything from £1 to £5 to £10. Through the power of social media, you can spread your goals far and wide. And we've seen a number of community projects in the Semble network who began life as a result of their crowdfunding activities, and long may that continue. And as far as I know, James and Phil, you'll chip in, I'm sure, but Kako is most likely going from strength to strength in her gleaning activities. Okay, Feedback UK, we've got two very handsome chaps on this slide trying to be respected. So of course, Feedback has the advantage of being a very established registered charity. It's been going for a number of years. And again, one of the things I want to talk about potentially in the Q&A, if it's of interest, is the different options that community groups can take to kind of structure themselves. It is absolutely possible and to remain unincorporated. So you do not have to become a registered charity or a community interest company or a community benefit society or any of those things in order to be a successful gleaning group. However, if you are interested in exploring those options, for those of you who aren't already structured in one of those ways, it can be advantageous in giving you access to funding. What you may see if you're interested in sort of obtaining grant funding is that a lot of grant giving organisations will have a restriction on the types of groups that they can fund, and often they look for groups that are incorporated in one way or another. And incorporated is just a fancy way of saying that you have some kind of legally recognised structure, as I say, charity, community interest company, those kind of things. And we can talk a little bit about those options, the pros and cons, how you go about incorporating, and some of the way you can find help, support and advice to do that. Just staying with Feedback for a while, Feedback I think has, I'm perhaps slightly biased in saying this, but Feedback has done a really good job of, the reason Feedback is still going today and is growing and becoming stronger is because they have a very wide range of funding sources. So strategically, that was always quite important. So Feedback accesses regional funding, like in Gleaning in Sussex and Kent. I'm sure Phil can talk a bit more about that. National funding from some government programmes, EU funding. A number of our programmes in the past have had money from the EU. It's of course a slightly uncertain landscape at the moment due to the ongoing Brexit talks, but I think in my view it's quite likely that even when the United Kingdom exits the European Union, we will continue to have access to some of the EU-wide funding programmes. I certainly hope that's the case because they've been very supportive, very good ways of getting funding. The National Lottery has a huge variety of different kind of funding programmes, and new ones are releasing all the time. And whether that's kind of heritage lottery or whether it's community lottery, there I say a great number of lottery funding streams available. And then of course the UK has a really rich landscape of charitable trusts and foundations. That starts anywhere from the Wellcome Trust at one end, who give out almost £1 billion or several a year, and there's a huge mix of corporate foundations, family foundations, so on. There's a really good website which I'll link to at the end of this, called the Association of Charitable Foundations, which basically lists the UK's top 300 trusts and foundations. I'd say it is only the top 300. There are over 1,000 charitable foundations in the UK. And again, Feedback in the past has received funding and support from many of them. I also want to pause here a minute to talk about some of the ways in which Gleaning appeals to funders. We know that Gleaning Gleaning, if you like, ticks a number of boxes. It solves a lot of problems in one. So, of course, it tackles food waste. And there are a number of funders out there who are increasingly interested or increasingly aware of the problem of food waste and therefore may be willing to fund Gleaning groups who are tackling that. Gleaning also is a really good way of promoting sort of environmental awareness. We've run at Feedback a huge, we had a 3-year programme which James and Phil were heavily involved in, about getting young people involved in Gleaning as volunteers, not necessarily to rescue food, but really as a means of giving people experience of going to farms, of understanding where food comes from, how farmers work, the challenges around food production, and the kind of issues of food waste. So as a kind of entry point into the environmental issues of food waste, Gleaning is a really powerful tool. And again, a lot of funders have been really interested in that. More recently, again, some units group may be already working this, but what we're starting to see is across the funding landscape is a lot of funders are interested in the problems of mental health. This has been really brought to the fore by COVID-19 and the lockdown. And one issue in particular that's come to the fore is lack of access to outdoors, to nature, to green space, and so on. So programs that can offer people, especially people living in urban environments, ways to get outside into the countryside, into nature, are really being seen to offer a benefit. You know, community gardens are already one step ahead. There's a number of community garden projects in the UK that already apply for funding as a way of providing mental health services. You might hear terms like horticulture and social therapy, or a variant thereof. And again, the NHS is starting to look at social prescribing. So in other words, can the NHS refer people to outdoors projects like community gardening, like gleaning? And therefore there may be more and more state funding from the NHS, from DEFRA, from Public Health England and so on, available to support those kind of schemes, as well as some of the trusts and foundations being interested in also funding those kind of programs. Yeah, that was, I did, as I said at the start, there's so much I can talk about today, whether it's about kind of gleaning specifics, whether it's about funding options, whether it's about how to structure your group, whether it's about where to find additional help, support, tools and resources. But I was really keen not to just kind of talk a bit for too long. What I really want to do is take the opportunity to hear from you where you think I'd like to hear where some of the groups are at and where you feel you'd like to get to, if indeed you have a kind of idea of where you'd like to get to, and what support you think you need. So in a few minutes, what I thought we could do is we will go out into some breakout rooms, and what I really want each of the groups just to have a really open conversation to kind of share and learn about where are we all at, you know, where are we at right now in terms of our group, where would we like to get to, and what do we need to get there? Is that funding? Is it more support in terms of structure? Is it more access to resources? Is it better networks and so on, in order that we can kind of share and learn from each other? And I say I'm really keen for that to be a very open conversation. Then we'll come back and ask each of the groups to report back on what they found within their groups, you know, the challenges people have encountered, the inspiring ideas and so on. And then at the end of that, we'll have a kind of a Q&A, and I'm very happy to field any questions, as I'm sure Josie will be too, and perhaps even James and Phil and Maddie might want to chip in there as well. Any immediate, before we go into the breakout rooms, I'm aware I've kind of whizzed through quite a lot of things. If there are any immediate questions that you have in your mind right now that you think you'd like to ask immediately, please, we can do that right now. Otherwise, we can save those for the end. Great, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Maddie, do you want to?
Yeah, can I just ask, did you, are we going into 4 rooms with Phil, James, you and Josie in each of those rooms?
Yes, yeah, indeed.
Great, okay. So I'll just do.
Thanks for that, Dan. That was really amazing and really great to be able to frame it with the various types of gleaning networks across the world. And I think it's safe to say you're probably the only person knocking about that could have been able to deliver that. So yeah, no, really kind of amazing perspectives. And yeah, particularly with Espigula Doors, I think I put it in the chat as well, but they have definitely worth checking out as an organisation because they've got quite a sort of strong advocacy position within kind of regional and Catalan government, and have managed to, with a series of other organisations that we've worked with, managed to sort of advocate for some fairly like powerful changes with regards to sort of food waste legislation in Spain. So yeah, very inspiring. And to add as well, they have a training program for people that are sort of far from the workplace, long-term unemployed people in that area, teaching them how to process some of the produce that they're gleaning as well and selling it. So there's kind of a further charitable arm of that as well.
Yeah, they're awesome, and they're going from strength to strength. And in fact, James, you've been to visit them, I believe, in Catalonia.
Yes, I have. Yeah, no, I've been to see their processing plant when we were doing an event there, and yeah, it's really inspirational. Didn't quite get to get gleaning there, unfortunately, but
there's time.
There always is. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think we're all going into the breakout rooms now.
Lovely.
And before we go, could we just get a reminder of the questions?
Yeah, so just what we're looking at is, I just want people to share where they're at right now, just to me, you know, what, especially interesting for me to hear in the groups in my room, you know, who are these groups and, you know, where are you at in terms of your journey into gleaning?
Yeah.
Where you'd like to get to, if indeed you want to grow or just kind of, you know, sustain yourself as you are, that's all very valid. And what the most important question is, what do we need to either continue gleaning or to grow as a gleaning group? And so that could be funding, networks, resources, volunteers, whatever, structure, legal status, and we just have an open chat and come back. And if we can appoint at the start one representative from each group to feedback when we return from our breakout rooms.
Super. All right, see you on the flip side.
All right.
Matt,
Yeah.
are you some of the things that we've experienced through working with people from sort of a variety of different backgrounds. So I've been working on Gleaning Days before, where with participants, volunteers who may struggle with anxiety, neurological conditions such as autism, and other kind of not immediately apparent conditions. And my kind of understanding of this is the pressure that some of those people may feel to kind of conform to whatever social norms. I've got a particularly vivid memory of driving a volunteer to a Gleaning Day, and then we arrived. I was very excited to kind of greet the group and kind of give a bit of a briefing. Lots of very friendly people there that looked very excited. I had a really nice chat with this particular volunteer on the way to the Gleaning Day, seemed very excited, and as soon as this person saw the large group that he was then expected to participate in, he immediately kind of clammed up and then wanted to just sit in the car and not participate on the day. And that for me was a really, that really struck me, that it was important for me to just try and have a nurturing attitude towards that person.
I think we've lost James momentarily, so hopefully he's just reconnecting. But yeah, that experience of being particularly welcome to people who have social anxiety, it's interpersonal, but it's also it's about good facilitation as well, and making sure the information is provided with clarity, so they come prepared to face that situation. And oh, what's going on with Zoom? Mine's jumping around a bit. I think James's connection might have cut out, so he has jumped out. He's no doubt trying to reconnect. I'll share an experience from Sussex of working with groups that probably have additional needs for accessibility. And that's actually often young men, but not exclusively, who have Down syndrome and have a PA. And they'll often, their household will manage their care budget rather than using care services. And PAs are often looking for good activities to get out and about with their boss, who might be have Down syndrome or be on the autistic spectrum. So that pairing of a PA and a person with additional needs coming on a Gleaning Day is often a really good bonus to have along, because they bring energy, they're excited, they I'd say work really hard because they enjoy it, but also after the first time they come, they're really good to come back. So in Sussex on Gleaning Days, we've had young men with Down syndrome who've come with their PAs and been really into it. In some instances, there might be an extra bit of preparation, maybe a phone call with their parent in advance to explain what it's about. It obviously helps if you have that relationship with a family. But yeah, I think the key thing really is ensuring. Well, I've just got a message from James. He has lost his internet connection. Okay, so I'll try and follow up from that, and I'll share my screen. Ah, he's back in the room.
Hi, sorry about that. My internet just took a very a funny turn.
That's all right. I was just sharing about having some gleaners in Sussex with additional needs who have come along, and how it's been possible to make them be more included. It was a bit off the cuff. I hadn't prepared that, but I just have a memory of working well with those individuals and their households.
Thanks for that. Shall I jump back in with where I was?
Please do.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to very quickly whip through because I'm conscious of time. But one other thing that we've experienced quite successfully in some of our well-established Gleaning Hub in Kent was one of our coordinators there started engaging quite a lot with some of the beneficiaries or service users of a homeless organisation that they were donating to. And she got talking with them, built some relationships, and eventually invited them to be the group that came and did some of the gleaning. And when they were then redistributing to other community organisations, there was a real positivity and sense of well-being that those participants reported through this idea that they felt like they were being inherently valued. It sort of broke this dichotomy of that we mentioned earlier, of trying to break the cycle of charity, when the people that were, traditionally might just be receiving the aid were active participants in giving that to others. And that's kind of something that I would encourage people to explore, kind of in creative ideas to do so. A final thought would just be the idea of wherever we're gleaning. So you might be gleaning in kind of rural area, you might be living in a city and then traveling a little bit out to kind of glean there. I would really encourage people to kind of do some research into cultural centres, community centres of different religions, of different ethnic backgrounds, and engage with them, try and have an understanding of what resonates within that community, like particularly in terms of the kind of the diets and the foods that people might traditionally eat. But I think that the key is to try and involve that community rather than kind of consult with them, and as much as possible try and invite people on gleaning days and kind of try and co-create some of the kind of solutions to some of the issues that we've been talking about in collaboration with groups, and doing our best to kind of design these projects together. So that is the end of that. What I wanted to do is just spend a little bit of time, and I understand that everybody has a very different kind of entry point into discussions like this, so I'm not going to expect everyone to share. And if people would feel more comfortable putting things in the chat, then that would be great. But maybe we'll just spend quiet reflection, and then if anybody feels compelled, much like we did in the session earlier, to kind of share any ideas that they might have about taking action and kind of embedding these values of inclusion, diversity, and accessibility in their Gleaning Hub, or anyone who has previous experience of kind of doing deeper, quite active work in this field. So if we just spend 1 minute just having some quiet thinking time, and then I'll give everybody the opportunity to share. Okay, did anyone feel compelled to share something initially? Joy.
Right. This is about our refuge use. It was made for refugees, to fund refugees. We called it refugees because it seemed like a good name at the time. And our initial group of refugees really didn't like this name, and we considered changing it. They felt that we were doing it to them somehow. I can only describe it like that. When we had the second wave of refugees coming to Bromsgrove, we invited them to come and actually pick some of the apples, which probably you will remember, James. And when they came along, we had to provide coats and hats and boots and things, but they enjoyed it. And there seems to be a much more positive attitude within that group now to it being called refugees. And indeed, some of them have set up a store and asked to sell some of it. And so being more inclusive has helped that product to gain popularity amongst those people that it was meant to help. So yeah, that's my experience of it.
Brilliant, thank you, Joy. One thing to add there, which was a really important point you made about the provision of coats and boots and things like that for people that have grown up being able to experience kind of the great outdoors. Those things may seem quite obvious, but for people who are coming at it from a very different entry point, being able to offer those tools in order to make sure that somebody's going to have a good time, and doing that in a way that is discreet and isn't going to make somebody feel like they're the recipient of charity, is a very important kind of reflection from that, I think. Did anybody else want to contribute to this?
Yes, I'd like to have an input to that, James. I've got experience of adults with learning difficulties because my daughter, my daughter's 40, and being out in the fresh air is something that is very important to her and to her lifestyle. And with gleaning, it's come to my attention that there are thousands of small orchards around the country. People have apple trees, pear trees, plum trees, whatever it might be, and very often that produce might very well go to waste. The enterprise that I'm involved in, as I've mentioned 2 or 3 times, we're going to glean 6 tons of pears, so it's quite a big operation that we're doing with 30 or 40 people. But if there is some way that people with Down syndromes can actually go to smaller people's farms or orchards or even large gardens, it would be a good way of helping those disadvantaged people to get out in the fresh air. Because I've found just in the last week that there's 3 people that have been in touch with us saying, you know, you can come and have my apples if you want them, because they've got too many. So I think that's a very good way of looking at it, helping people in the community that are disadvantaged.
Great. And just to expand on that from a sort of logistical perspective, you make a very good point that it can be very easy to, I mean, the way I see it, it can be very easy to want to tackle so many of these issues in one fell swoop with one big gleaning day, whereas it's quite arguable that it would be perhaps more appropriate for providing an experience for a group or individuals with additional provision, that being the focal point of your gleaning day, rather than it being prioritizing the amount of produce that's going to be picked and donated, or ensuring you've got a wide range of community groups, but ensuring that that person is having a beneficial experience. So yeah, prioritizing perhaps a smaller farm where the logistical implications are going to be a bit simpler is probably a good idea. I think I saw Karen's hand and Joy's hand. You want to go first, Karen? I know you've got a
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to mention something that I had from experience, which I'm still working with, which is recruiting and working with volunteers on a food project, I found it really interesting to, I offered everybody, you know, we all had training, and in their motivations and values around volunteering in a food project where we're doing gleaning, as well as some cooking workshops and so on. And it was a great opportunity to kind of, it was quite tricky, but to sort of unpack and very gently tease out people's motivations, because I actually had quite a lot of what we would now call colonial responses. Well, you know, these people, they don't know how to feed their children, they don't know how to eat, they don't know how to cook fresh food, they don't know, you know, and it was a really interesting space to hold, because we're in that situation where we needed these volunteers desperately, but also I was really clear that I didn't want volunteers who thought they were coming to do good and to teach people how to do things, you know, from that value base. And so it's just really an encouragement, really, because we managed to keep all the volunteers and also have a very robust and kind of healthy, if challenging, discussion around that. And so I think I really felt I was flying at the edges of my my bridge in that conversation, because this is years ago now. It might be easier to have it now, but I would just encourage everyone to be really clear, because what we have now is that if anyone volunteers for the project, there's a clear kind of description of what it involves, and we actually specifically say explicitly, you know, if you're motivated because you feel that the beneficiaries of the project are people that don't know how to do X, Y, and Z, this is not the role for you, because, you know, we have a very different approach, and we talk about our approach, and we say that if this is new to you, you're welcome to join and so on. So it was just about having difficult conversations, really, and not being afraid to have them. Because, as I say, we managed to retain all our volunteers, including somebody who was an ex-domestic science teacher who was very entrenched in their views about what they were coming into the project to do. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Karen. That touches upon some really, really interesting and, as you say, challenging conversational topics that have become, in a lot of ways, I'm very thankful that they become, I'm very hopeful that these discussions becoming more widespread is a really important thing. But I think just to expand on you touched upon this idea of the kind of colonial mindset, and something that I've kind of been reflecting on quite a lot recently is this. It's not something that I've had any personal lived experience of, but particularly the kind of environmental NGO or charity sector actually mirrors and perpetuates some of the more kind of oppressive structures within society. At least that's how I notice it, in terms of kind of representation within workforce. This very colonial mentality of we can consult with this community and then draw out kind of what we project their aims and their goals to be, rather than there with actually being any sort of genuine participation within that. And I mean, this is a problem that Feedback as an organisation is faced with, particularly in terms of sort of representation within the workforce. You know, so these are all things that really, really need to be considered, especially, you know, it's with the NGO sector, with community food. Yeah, I think that's yeah, it's really great that you pointed that out. Charmaine.
Hi, yeah, thanks, James. It's kind of an extension of what Karen was mentioning. I do see personally from the Gleaning network that there is a minority of people of African heritage that actually participate in gleaning. I do believe that it's a bit reaching out to particular communities, but it's also about the engagement as well. I find that personally, if I go to a lot of different events, because of what I'm interested on the eco side, I find that there's not many people of African heritage at these events. And I personally can tell if somebody isn't used to interacting with anybody of a different culture. I don't know if it's body language or just, I don't know what it is, but you can tell. And I think it's just about being aware of that if you aren't used to interacting with somebody of a different culture, it's about getting to know that person rather than to getting to understand the culture, because the culture will come out, but getting to know the individual, because I find a lot of people go towards the cultural aspect of who I am rather than me as an individual. And I think it may be curiosity, but I think it makes me a bit wary of anybody asking me specific cultural questions, and rather than getting to know me as an individual. And I think that will be just a tip for people that aren't used to interacting with different cultures, if you can understand what I mean. I don't know if I've made myself very clear, but yeah.
That was very clear, Charmaine, and thank you for sharing that. I think that's really, really valuable. And yes, wanted to pick up on that point of the outreach, like particularly within the Gleaning Network. That's something that we very much recognise kind of as an organisation, and yeah, hopefully the steps that we take in the next kind of few years will help to address that. Any more reflections, or it probably is a good idea of moving on to sort of supporting how we can support you and kind of other ideas for what hubs need?
I've just got a quick reflection that I think speaks to what Charmaine was saying, that there's a hurdle that you need to overcome, I think, as a community activist or gleaning coordinator, where you're increasing accessibility through outreach and enabling more people to join, and working with people. And once that barrier is passed, once someone that is hard to reach or underserved, or from a part of the community that would have fewer opportunities to get involved, once they're involved, they are not to be pigeonholed or not to be defined by the characteristics that you sort of might have made you think that it would be great to include them. And I think that's something that successful community groups do very well, that first and foremost people become a gleaner. They're not first and foremost representing the group that they might have come from, that you've engaged with them on. So I think that kind of relates to a bit to what Joy was saying earlier, and a bit to what Charmaine was saying, but treating people as individuals, but also treating them as allies within your network.
Brilliant. I'm just going to move us on to the next section. Oh, sorry, Maddie's popped her hand up.
So I was just going to say, in terms of how you gather information about your volunteers and participants, how you do your risk assessment, and things like that, all of this stuff really needs to be woven into, the forms, every way that a person interfaces with gleaning, even if it seems, even in a risk assessment, how you name and frame things that are risks. Disabilities might fall under that, traditionally. It's a question really, how do you rethink and use language appropriately to be fully inclusive on things like risk assessments, or the information you gather about people at the beginning, so that you inform yourself about people, who they are and what their needs are.
Cool. Thank you, Maddie. I just wanted to again take a moment to recognise that some of what we were just discussing speaks to a much wider, very complex and nuanced issue with hundreds of years of historical context behind it as well. So I wanted to just recognise that while I feel that we have to move on, but this requires, certainly from feedback's perspective, kind of further investigation and reflection and working on this. And when we are considering how we're going to move forward and stay in touch, this has reminded me that kind of putting together sort of specific working groups for different gleaning hubs and ways in which we could kind of stay in touch and kind of discuss and share ideas around specific ideas would potentially be a really great thing going forward. Phil, I think we were going to pass over to you to kind of talk about what we can kind of offer. And
yeah, thanks, James. I think that topic could have had much more than half an hour, but there are time limitations. And we're looking to wrap up in the next 15 minutes. So without further ado, I wanted to share my screen and show, oh, sorry, I'm jumping forward. Yeah, so basically going forward after these 4 webinars, we're delighted that you've taken part. But this is hopefully the start of a working relationship rather than packing you off to be merry gleaners. Just wanted to outline a little bit of what feedback's able to offer in the coming weeks and months. We would like to provide ongoing support. So that could be, you emailing us with questions, us scheduling phone calls to talk through practicalities or needs that you guys have or uncertainties. We're aware that you guys are, each of your groups are at different stages, so that level of support will vary. We're also going to be opening up a small grant offering on the back of these webinars for you as community groups to get going. So that is something that we haven't confirmed yet, but as in we haven't scheduled yet, but we're anticipating it being in the coming weeks, that will enable you to apply for sort of seed funding. We've been sharing learning resources from this webinar in the emails, but more of that is going to be uploaded onto the Toolkit website, and we're really keen to embed this learning and make it as accessible for you guys, and please do holler if there's more learning resources that you need. But also I think this is a good moment for, on the back of the Semble session earlier, to really hear from you guys beyond those 3 points on this slide. What could your group need to get the ball rolling, and what can we as feedback do to support you with that? Does anyone have any initial comments on that?
did you want to end the screen share, Phil, just so we can see everyone?
Yeah.
Thanks. It's a broad question, I know. Susie?
Question, thank you. I'm just wondering, so our group isn't ready to go down a gleaning route yet. I've said already that I'm here to see if it's something that we can build into what we do in the future, yeah, it's something that I definitely would like to support, but at the moment we need to become more sustainable as an organisation that supplies food, surplus food, so addressing food waste, but to our local community, and then to move on from that to become more of a community organisation that can help to educate about food waste and nutritious food and things like that. That's where gleaning would come in. When you talk about funding as feedback, is it worth us thinking about our needs at those initial stages, because we're not ready for the gleaning funding specifically yet?
I think it would be worth outlining that the funding would be for gleaning, so it's kind of support for groups to get going. Or if you're already done a little bit to strengthen.
We'll come back in a few months' time or something,
but
however long it takes.
But that said, Susie, I'm really keen to. We're going to be through one of the other projects I'm working on. We're working a little bit with David at the Hornbeam to place one of our paid interns there. So there's that's going to be hopefully the start of kind of increased dialogue that I'll be having with you, Petra, Karen. I mean, obviously you're sort of working together but separately, but I'm seeing ways in which there could be a bit of a kind of Northeast London coalition, of which gleaning can be kind of one of the activities. So, but in terms of kind of food surplus redistribution, I wouldn't really be doing my job very well if I wasn't there to try and provide a bit of guidance or support, or just sort of, you know, carve out some ideas with you.
Great. Yeah.
Karen.
I'm probably going to show my ignorance here, and you've probably already got it up on your website and I haven't come across it, but it would be really useful to know of gleaning opportunities further afield that perhaps we could participate in, just works on the ground before we do something ourselves. So that's just something very simple.
Yeah, you'd be really welcome to join a glean in Sussex.
Yeah.
Joy?
Can I ask about feedback, and it's sort of the quantity that it would be interested in to send a van for us? Is there a quantity that you've got to get to in order to be viable for you to become involved?
As in involved on the day with a glean?
Well, no, to help with logistics, really, because it's all right if you've only got a small quantity that you can put into cars, but being a population that don't have pickup trucks, is it possible to help us to move stuff and take it into your distribution centres if there's enough quantity? What I'm trying to understand is how big a quantity do you need before you're interested to distribute nationally?
Do you mean fair share, Joy, rather than feedback?
Am I talking about fair share? I think I don't know the difference. That's
no, it's very commonly confused. Often people think I work for Fair Share. So feedback does not have distribution hubs, and we don't have food storage facilities. Fair Share, on the other hand, have a franchise model of over 20 hubs over the across the country, and they have a very fast responding email address called foodoffers@fairshare. I think it's .org.uk. I'm going to confirm that and put it in the chat.
Yeah.
And basically one of their members of staff will get back to you within the hour. If you said, we're going to be gleaning this on this farm, this is the anticipated volume, would it be possible to arrange a collection? And that depending on the location, they would either ask one of their own vans to go and collect it, or they would arrange freight services. So you'd be responsible for making sure it was well palletized, if you know what I mean, and then the freight would send it to a Fair Share depot.
Just to clarify what what our role might be in terms of triggering like that sort of larger amount. I think when we gleaned last year, Joy, Alistair, your collaborator, sort of hired a van and then collected some of the apples and then kind of distributed it locally. But if, say, in the instance you did have more that you would need that, I'd imagine for the first one or two gleans, like you could get on the phone, give us a shout, and then we could just talk you through some of the considerations. Like, here's a good company that you can hire a vehicle from. Do you have somebody that can drive it? Do you have beneficiary organisations kind of lined up? Just maybe talking through step by step some aspects of that process of the running the gleaning day, just to make you feel a little bit more comfortable with it.
I think from our point of view, it's who the end person that's going to receive this, that more than anything. We've got somebody that can get a van for nothing and drive it, but it's actually getting it to the end user that that's my biggest worry, really. Although I know Claire has said that she's got some information for that.
Brilliant. Really glad to hear that. Anybody else got any thoughts on this? Charmaine?
Hi, yeah, it actually follows on from Joy's question. And are there any plans for feedback to have a food sharing network amongst the gleaners? Because, as you know, in Buckinghamshire, we have got only a small, probably 2 pick your own farms locally. So if I'm thinking of commercialising what I do from the Glean with the surplus foods, it may not be sustainable. So I'm just thinking about sourcing from other gleaning networks or gleaners locally. So is there anything that you're doing? And on the van front as well, about national agencies like Enterprise or anything, working out some kind of agreement with them that the gleaning networks, wherever we are, can use their vans at a discount or something like that. Is that something that you could possibly help with?
I think that's a great idea. Both of them are great ideas. Yeah, we, as most people who have been involved in registered charities, whenever you're trying to do something like that, you always ask if they've got a charitable discount. But I think when the sort of larger and more active the network becomes, the more that there's an opportunity for a really legitimate kind of more collaborative working with them and getting sort of bigger discount. I think in terms of this food sharing network, I think it's a really great idea. I think feedback, we haven't specifically done any work on it yet, but what I would suggest is that we find a way of kind of putting together a working group of various people within this chat after this at some point in the near future, or once we're getting going a little bit more, because I feel that, and we would obviously be happy to coordinate and kind of facilitate that, but I don't necessarily think that an organisation that's working remotely from London at the moment and doesn't have our own, we're not kind of doing our own transport, would necessarily be best placed to say the best way that that would work. It would be interesting to kind of hear all of your perspectives and work out what the sort of logistical implications of it, and i.e. kind of the minimum amount that you would want, and you know, those kind of things. So I'm definitely keen to have those conversations, Charmaine, and we can kind of push that forward and then try and come up with something that will work for everyone. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. Thanks. Yeah, great.
Wicked.
And just following on that kind of continued collaboration and obviously keeping in touch, we have a couple of options for how we might continue dialogue, and that's on different platforms. We can use an email list where, you know, everybody that's willing has their name added to the email list, and then it's very simple for each of us to email the whole list. We could do a Facebook group, we could do a WhatsApp group potentially, or people could suggest another platform. But if we could do just a quick show of hands, you are allowed to vote twice, but don't vote to more than that. So who would be in favour of an email list?
Yeah, we're getting quite a lot of unanimity there, I think.
Right. Okay, Facebook group. All right, less popular. A WhatsApp group. Yeah.
Popular.
Yeah.
The iteration I have with a WhatsApp group is that they can have quite a lot of traffic, and it's this, you can be, Phil and I were discussing this morning, and you can just be sort of drawn into responding to, feeling you need to acknowledge and respond to things at sort of 10 p.m. at night, and it can end up just being another WhatsApp group that you mute the notifications of for 1 year and kind of never use if you're in that kind of capacity. That's just something we can kind of be mindful of there.
Sorry, could I just ask?
We ever got to the stage where we needed instant responses and people needed very quick turnaround and comments?
Yeah, I guess there's different levels, isn't there? There's within your own local group with your volunteers, and that will be a different, the way that you decide. And then there's the network nationally of us together. Yeah, how that works best. I'm just conscious Rebecca in Scotland didn't make a state of preference, I don't think. Just wondering if you have a preference, Rebecca, if you're there.
She might have been pulled off to other working.
Just reply in the chat.
Ah, right. Sorry.
Yeah. If
okay.
You put it in the chat, Rebecca, what your preference would be. Thank you.
One slight technical thing from me, I'm just going to share my screen on it quickly, is we would love it if you would, once we get gleaning, you're able to sort of record the glean on the database, which you can do through, sorry, I'm just trying to work out how to share my screen again. I'm very good at this. Where is it? Essentially, I've just got here, you can see, if you go onto the homepage of the Gleaning Network website, just in the top right corner, there's a record your glean button. And then you just get, you're asked to just fill out a short Google form with kind of the tonnage, the gleaning, and kind of any other useful information. And of course, that's not so feedback can take credit for your hard work, but it does help for us to be able to demonstrate sort of the truly sort of national scale of the network and how successful it is, and then hopefully to help yourselves secure extra funding, and then maybe allow us to be able to kind of facilitate more kind of learning forums like this as well. Okay. I think, was there anything else that we needed to cover?
Not content-wise, but it might be a good moment for us to do a sort of quick checkout. Personally, I've been really very grateful that you guys have been so generous with your time over the last 4 weeks to attend and participate so actively. So I want to say thanks for coming, but I'd also love just to hear a few reflections from others, quite short because we're over past 12:30. But yeah, it would be great to hear from you on the way out of this experience, how it was for you, and just a chance for a bit of closure, really.
Well, I'd like to go ahead, ladies first.
I was just going to say I have to dash off really quickly, so I was going to say it's been really amazing, and I've got so many ideas buzzing around in my head that could happen, and I was going to hijack this call to say, Susie, Petra, let's get together and sort out some proposals.
Thank you, Karen.
I'd like to thank all three of you for putting these webinars together. It's been fantastic. I found it very inspirational just by talking to or listening to the three of you, because you're obviously very dedicated to what you're doing and you do a fantastic job. Well done.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that.
I might as well dive in here now, because I just wanted to say, feeling equally grateful and quite inspired, and by the same token, as Steve just said, by the fact that everyone's clearly doing incredible work and very dedicated to making change in the world. And that's all we can really, it's something that definitely drives me as an individual, and to meet other people that have come from a wide variety of places and coming together and kind of sharing ideas and inspiration of their personal stories of doing that, and how we can inspire each other has just been amazing.
I'll go next. I think it's been great meeting so many people. There's not many people that are interested in gleaning around here, have the same kind of passion. So sometimes I think I'm a bit crazy getting excited about vegetables, but it's nice to know there's other people out there as well. The contacts and the links that have been shared throughout over the weeks have just been amazing. I think I've got pages full every week, so it's just been really good to find out what else is happening in other countries, especially with what Dan shared today as well. It was really good, so I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I can go next. So I was originally only going to attend one of these sessions because I thought it sits very well with Susie and Karen already. But basically after the first session, I thought, wow, this is incredibly interesting. It really resonates with so many of my own ideas, and it's really useful, and sort of it can integrate in so many different ways into what we are doing already. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing everything you've learned yourselves as well. I'm sure it's been a really long journey for everyone here. And thanks for letting us all know.
Thanks, Petra.
I could follow up by saying thanks as well. It's been really insightful and great to have a network of people that we can all call on as well, and to share our continued experiences, hopefully, as we all start towards gleaning. or carry on doing it. And also what James said about a London or North East London sort of network, and possibly further afield as well. I think it's important for us all to support each other, we can all sort of get involved in different ways, maybe, because we're going to have different groups that we're going to be working with. So it makes sense to have those, continue those relationships. And Charmaine, if you want to find some more people who are excited by vegetables, come down to the Hornbeam, because there are lots of us. Thank you.
I love it there. It's brilliant.
Thanks, Susie.
I'd like to say thank you as well, but and also say, what am I going to do with my time now? This isn't going to take place. It's really nice to meet other people that've got a similar interest, get all the links, and know that there's ongoing support as well, really. So thanks, chaps.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. It's inspired me to get back on the horse again and try and get cracking. And it's just lovely to see the youngsters that are picking up the gauntlet, us old cranks, that it's our generation that's caused a lot of this food waste with the supermarkets. And it's great to see that there's younger people out there that are taking an interest, because you only ever see bad things in the press and on the news about the younger generation. And it's great to see younger people on here taking an interest, like you say, in vegetables. But it's just been wonderful. I've really enjoyed these last sessions.
Thank you, Tina. Charmaine's just made a really good point in the chat about sharing contact details of everyone in this group, sort of email addresses. I mean, we'll definitely do the Rise Up email list. I don't think that does give everyone sort of contact, but I'll probably only be able to share contact details of anyone here who is happy to approve that. I mean, if anyone has any issues with that, maybe I can just get a yes in the chat, or if you're happy for kind of email addresses to be shared and stuff like that. And the other thing you'll be pleased to hear, I forgot to prepare a feedback form for this final session. But when we follow up, it would be really, really lovely if all of you would be able to help us out by kind of providing feedback on the sessions. Because the most important thing, I think, for feedback and our sort of moving forward as an organization is actually what we've been learning from you, rather than just necessarily having the opportunity to share, because this is how we can kind of formulate our strategies and our activities to actually be beneficial to local communities. So on that note, kind of getting kind of feedback on how these sessions are structured and the rest of it is also really, really important. I'm probably not going to get as many of you respond as had I forced you to do it in the last 5 minutes here, but yeah, far too many good conversations happening. I guess just a little bit of space for any final reflections.
I'll just do my checkout, if I may. So I haven't kind of been involved in gleaning for quite a long time, and it's totally inspired me to get out in the fields and do it again. And it's really, taken me right back into the fields where we gleaned when I was doing it before, and just the amazing feeling of the sort of solidarity and the physical work, and there's a real sort of connection and sort of elation in it. It's just great on so many levels. So hopefully I'll be doing some this year, and and just if that feels like it is a lot of information, and to sort of, don't worry if it feels overwhelming, if you're kind of at the beginning of this journey and it feels like a lot, and just take it like a chunk at a time and work it out just bit by bit. Just take steps and make the most of the support, ask all the questions, and just kind of by doing it you learn it as well. So don't worry if it feels like a muddle and pages of notes and lots of, you know, things to look at. Just hopefully the key elements are quite simple, and yeah, and just it's great that you're all here. Yeah, I'll just pass on to anyone else who wants to do their checkout. Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for organising these webinars. It's been really inspiring and also empowering, because it was something that I wanted to be involved in, but because there was nothing in Birmingham, I just thought, oh, it would be nice, but it's too daunting of a thing to think about, and leave it at that. But these series of webinars have given me the nudge that I needed to actually, you know, do something, and it feels achievable now. So yeah, thank you.
So happy to hear that, Claire. That's amazing. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of reflect on that as well, is that some of you may feel like sort of geographically like a little bit isolated, and it can feel like those sort of kind of initial steps to take feel quite impossible. There was a time back when the Gleaning Network was one guy, a colleague of ours called Martin, who used to sit at his desk and call farmers day after day after day after day after day. And he finally managed to make some breakthroughs, and then it's kind of built and snowballed to where we are now. But luckily, I mean, I just wanted to highlight that hopefully won't be the case for all of you. Like, despite you may be feeling isolated, you're not alone. There is this support network that is here, and we're on the end of a phone. We can all kind of support each other to kind of build this, and there's this kind of collective knowledge base that we have now. And the more we build it, the more people we're going to be inspiring to do this, until there's not a 10-mile patch that isn't being gleaned in the whole of the UK.
Anybody else that'd like to check out?
Yeah, otherwise I'll just carry on going, and nobody wants that.
We have rumbling bellies and other priorities in our lives, but it's been so special to share this with you over the last week. Thank you for taking part, and yeah, I think that's a wrap.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. Keep in touch, and
sharing another email with the next sort of steps summary and stuff afterwards as well. So if there's anything, I know Claire, you put another question in the chat about how we find out about where gleans are happening. So we'll address that in the follow-up. Thank you.
Don't be shy. We're all very approachable. Except I'm going on holiday for 2 weeks, so don't expect much from me.
Approach us.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.